What is going on, everybody? This is the third episode in our Marine Raider week, and today we're going to be talking to Nick Koumalatsos. Nick served as a Marine Raider, and he also has an amazing channel here on YouTube. He really pulls back the curtain. I think he's doing some of the best content in the veteran space because he pulls back the curtain, lets people see what his life is like. And this guy, he served as a Marine Raider. Today, he's got 7 different businesses. He runs a gym. He runs a coffee company. He's got a gear company. He's got a tactical consulting company, a movie company. I mean, all kinds of stuff going on with this guy. And he's a great dude. He wrote a book called Excommunicated Warrior that talks about his transition out of Marine Special Operations and into the civilian world. So you definitely want to check that out. The first 2 interviews we did this week were with his friend Josh Hansberger, who served on the same team with him in MARSOC. And the first interview with Josh, we talked about how Josh transitioned from the regular Marine Corps infantry over to MARSOC. The second interview, we talked a bit more about his career, a crazy injury that he got, and how he kind of pulled himself back together. Josh is Nick's partner on the Marine Corps boot camp programs and the Marine Corps Raider prep programs that they put out. They're great programs. You guys should check those out. Today with Nick, we're going to be talking about testosterone. Low T is a big problem amongst veterans, a big problem, particularly amongst people who come out of the special operations and combat arms communities. And it's a big problem amongst men in our society. We talk about ways of preventing low T. We talk about things you should look out for. And we talk about some of the amazing resources that Nick is bringing to the table. So you guys are going to get a lot out of this interview. Make sure you pull out a pen and a pad and you take notes. So with that, let's get into this interview with the awesome Nick Koumalatsos. What is going on, everyone out there in Warrior Soul Nation? This is Chris Albert, and I am joined once again by Nick Koumalatsos. Nick, how you doing today, man?
I'm great, and thank you so much for having me back on. The last conversation was really good. I don't know if we'll be able to beat that one, but yeah, that was a great podcast.
Dude, I love that conversation. It's one of my favorite episodes that I've done, and it was just outstanding. And been following you along, man, and I see you're doing jujitsu now, right?
Yeah. So I've something that I did earlier on in life. I can't say that I got really good at it. It was just more like I liked getting beat up. It was just a weird thing of just like waking up and getting the shit kicked out of you. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the Marine in me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I wanted to before I started up again, I wanted to get healthy because I didn't want to get injured or anything and prolong that. So, for those who've been following along, and I know you have with the whole baby saga. So I had to come off. I guess that goes right into our conversation, right? I had to come off. I went on HRT about 1.5 years after the Marine Corps, which I didn't realize. I had a bunch of symptoms, and a buddy of mine said, "Hey, I really feel like you should get your testosterone checked because, not to say anything is post-traumatic stress or anything else, but it sounds like low T issues, right?" And I'm not talking about the sexual stuff. I'm literally talking about quality of life, sleep,
Right.
Recovery. That people immediately go to sex for some reason, and they overlook all the other things. And so I did that for 6 years. And then Ms. Capper and I, made we wanted to start our own family. I had 2 kids. She hasn't had any kids, and we really wanted to start our own family. But I had a lot of things going against me. I had a vasectomy in 2007 because I almost lost my last wife around the birth of my second daughter. And at the time, you make the best decisions that you can make at the time, right? That's all any parent can do. We don't have all the answers, right? We never really know what we're doing. We're just making the best decisions that we can at that given time. So I had a vasectomy because I was like, raising 2 girls without a mother, like that's not a good idea. You know what I mean? It takes both sides. So I made that conscious decision to get a vasectomy. Not really thinking too much of it. And, obviously life happens and here we are again. So me being on testosterone, obviously not a great thing to try to have a baby. And then having a vasectomy also kind of puts a roadblock. But man, the miracle of modern medicine and science, it can be done. So I had to come off testosterone. And with that, man, my whole life was just wrecked. I mean, you can, you can imagine.
Yep. Yeah.
Um,
And that's something I want to address there because, and you said that at the beginning, everybody automatically goes to sex.
mhm.
But when it comes to low testosterone, everybody associates testosterone with this kind of aggressive, angry thing, but it's not.
Not at all.
Testosterone
No, not
actually
at all.
helps to calm you down, makes
Yeah.
you feel really good, makes
Yeah.
your
You're
body
happy.
feel really
Yeah.
good,
You're
makes
happy.
you happy, right?
Yeah. I was, so immediately, my mood went in the crapper. Like I would say probably more aggressive, are short fused because I just didn't feel good. I didn't feel good. So, and then like like almost like a depression feeling kicks in. What's different about this time though, is
Mm-hmm.
I knew what it was. Like, even though it still puts, don't get me wrong, it still puts strain on the relationship because I mean, I just felt like a sad sack of shit, really. Like I'm just like a sad sack of potatoes, and I no drive to do anything, that sort of thing. And we had a common goal, so we knew where we were heading, but it was still very, very difficult. And Chris, when I was going to the gym, and I still try to stay active, but man, I would go to the gym. I would do literally a calisthenic. I remember doing a calisthenic workout. I went out back of the gym of my gym and I was doing like lunges and then, a little bit of burpees in between the lunges and nothing real crazy, right? Like 4 rounds of lunges and burpees or something. And I was sore for 3 weeks.
Wow.
So
That's
how
crazy.
do you train with that?
Yeah, you can't.
You can't make progress, right?
Plus, on top of that, you're running 7 different businesses.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep things up. I'm trying to keep, because like it doesn't happen on its own. Like you got to make, like, this podcast doesn't grow on its own, right? You have to push it. You gotta talk to people. You gotta have interesting topics and things. There's a lot of work that goes beyond things. Things just don't just blow up and happen on their own. And so that I'm trying to make all that happen, and I'm just not there. And so anyway, so back to jiu-jitsu. Because of that, I lost a bunch of weight. I gained a little bit of unwanted weight. I kept my diet in check at the same time. But man, when your hormones are off, your whole life is off. And I think so many people are missing that connection. They just think that maybe they're gotten old or like they're frustrated. Like, I don't understand. I diet a little bit and nothing happens. And, if I work out, I get hurt or my back hurts or, I'm sore for a long time. There's a lot of different factors that they're not looking at. So for me, I wanted to wait until I got healthy, put some muscle back on my joint spaces. Cause as you know, if, for those of us that have injuries, especially the ones that served in the Marine Corps with shoulders and doing pull-ups and all kinds of stuff and rucking, it actually helps your shoulder to have that muscle mass on there. So if you can build the muscle mass up and encapsulate that joint space, it's going to protect it. And all those ligaments are going to be a little bit tighter and obviously working on mobility, but that muscle protects that joint and you just feel so much better. So I waited until that to get back into it, but man, it's been fun getting my butt kicked every morning.
It's an awesome sport. I've been kind of in a similar situation to you, not with the hormones, but I'm sure my hormones have taken a dive. I have a autoimmune disease called ulcerative colitis.
Yeah.
And since August, I've dropped 40 pounds in body weight, just because I'm going through a flare up and I'm recovering right now. They've got me on biologics, Remicade and things like that.
Yeah.
But if you lose that, I mean, I was going into jujitsu. I'm getting back on the mats now, and I feel like a little rag doll, like being tossed around and things like that.
Yeah. It's what it is, man. But it just, here's a little lesson. So in my life, and this is kind of comes off of testosterone, but this is just, talking about that same subject. In my life, there's not many areas that aren't controlled anymore, right? Mm-hmm. Like I push myself hard. That's granted. Most people can see that. I push myself in business. I take risk. I take risk with money. I take risk with opportunities. It is very, it can be very frightening, and fearful on everyday business, everyday life of mine. But at the same time, it's very controlled. Who the people that I work with, the people that I engage with, that I choose to engage with, everything in my life is very controlled and thought out. Okay. So so pushing yourself and getting something, I always talk about being uncomfortable or being comfortable in the uncomfortable. Okay. And I really looked at it and I was like, when have I truly been uncomfortable? Because I'm so comfortable in the uncomfortable in my arenas. Right. But I haven't really pushed myself outside the zone, like outside my comfort zone. Now, like, taking 20 grand and gambling on a business opportunity, for some people that might be like, holy crap, like this is a big deal. For me, I'm super comfortable doing that. It's not really, for me, no longer is that a big deal. And I'm fortunate to have those kind of opportunities, but waking up at 5 a.m. and going into a thing where you don't know anyone, and for me, not to like sound like a big deal, but they more than likely, because it's a military town, know who I am. Yep. I don't know them. They're better than me at what I'm about to do. So I'm literally walking into an unknown environment. I'm going to give them my money, and then they're going to beat the shit out of me.
Everybody's going to be like, hey, let's make the Marine Raider guy tap.
Yeah. Let's let this YouTube guy who thinks he's hot shit on YouTube, let's break him off a piece. So for me, that was for the first time, I was actually nervous. Like I don't get nervous about going on stage and delivering a keynote anymore. I don't get nervous about, there's just a lot that I'm which in the grand scheme of things, people are like, that's super uncomfortable, but I'm comfortable in that uncomfortable spaces now. Mm-hmm. But so it's been a long time that I've been able to, like, you wake up and you got those butterflies, like, should I even go? Should I do this? You know what I mean? Like I'm being 100% honest. I honestly thought, I was like, do I really want to put myself out there like this? Like, this is outside my bubble, right? This is outside my controlled environment. And it hit me. I was like, wow, this is the first time in a good amount of time that you have pushed yourself in a zone that is outside your comfort zone, right? That's really, really outside you're stepping into the unknown. They know you, you don't know them. You have no idea what's going to happen. And honestly, and it was like that. They did know me. They did know who I was. They definitely put they definitely put the pain down on it. But you know what? You show up the next day, mm-hmm. and you let them put the pain on you. And you know what? You show up, you get up, and in my mind, it's like a movie. It's just like, it's on repeat, like Groundhog Day. You wake up, you take your pre-workout, you grab your shit, and you go out the door, and then you do it again. And then you do it again, and you do it again. And you know what happens? All of a sudden you look back and you go, it's not that uncomfortable anymore.
Right.
This is what I do. This is part of my routine.
Right. And that's the thing, because I remember my first day walking into Jujitsu class, and this was years ago. I was about 210 pounds. I could deadlift over 600 pounds. I could squat over 500 pounds. And then I get on the mats, and the coach puts me with this guy who's about 140 pounds. And
he wore your ass out.
Dude, he broke me in half. Like, broke me in half. I was like, what the hell? And I'd been a wrestler before.
Yeah.
And it was just like, it was ridiculous. And that's where I was like, all right, maybe for the past few years, all the strength I have, I need to figure out how to utilize it in another way, and maybe figure out how to create other types of strength in my body and get them comfortable in another way.
Yeah. Try to figure out how to use that leverage against those 150-pound guys, right? How to use that weight against them. Yeah. Exactly. Pretty much every class I get beat up by probably, I don't even know how much he weighs, probably 150-pound 18-year-old. And he just wears me out, man. Like he's just so fast, and he's over here for 1 second. And then I'm like, I'd much rather go with like the bigger guys because we're slow, we're methodical. But those dudes, those little small dudes, man, they just are so fast. So that's my joke. He's like, "What did you do today?" Well, I woke up at 5 a.m. and got choked out by an 18-year-old. How's your day going?
It's so true, though.
But if you do it, you love it. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I highly recommend it to everybody at home. And I think it does play into what we're going to talk about here because, I think as guys get older, in conjunction with some of the health things that go on, we lose that band of brothers that we're supposed to be around. We lose that male, that tribe, right?
Yeah.
And jujitsu is a great way of doing that. It's a great way of getting yourself back into that position, and that could have a positive mental and hormonal effect down the line. I'm not saying it's going to like automatically raise your testosterone levels or anything like that, but it's definitely something that can help.
Well, it does. It creates a dopamine response. And that's where I think people that are stuck in life and they're depressed are, they're not, this is why physical fitness is such a huge, crucial portion of health and mental health. Back in the day, we all had like most jobs were manual labor. We no longer have to do manual labor. What do we do? Most of are the ones that are really healthy. We basically go to the gym and recreate manual labor so that we can, be healthy. And there's an immediate dopamine response with that, with any sort of physical fitness. And that's what was in the Excommunicated Warrior book. It's one of the steps of getting right is doing something, because we create that dopamine response. And all of a sudden you have a guy or girl that starts looking in the mirror. They don't look any different. But within a week, you go into the gym, they're like, "Oh, I look better." You don't. There's no way that within a week you're gonna make a noticeable difference in the mirror. But what it is there's a hormone pushing to your brain saying, "I feel better," and therefore I see myself different and I look better. And that's a huge thing. And on the tribe thing, I mean, absolutely, that is find your tribe, right? Like we all. As much as we love the Marine Corps and we love the Marine Corps Brotherhood or the military brotherhood in general, even for law enforcement, I did a 2.5-hour podcast with a sergeant that was in a special unit of law enforcement agency, and we talked about the same thing. When you're in it, it's there, right? But when you leave, which everyone will, I don't care where you're at in your career, at some point you will leave that circle. You will leave that tribe. And while we always say like, "Oh, the brotherhood's forever, it's not. It's there while you're there, but like the mission goes on. That mission continues on. So it's up to us to find a new tribe and to find another, kind of brotherhood. And this is the reason why CrossFit is probably $1 billion industry at this point, because that's what they've done. They've created, it goes beyond fitness. They've created a tribe of people, and you get in there and it's kind of like a cult following. It's the same thing with jujitsu, same with a lot of different things. And it can be whatever, but if you are alone and out there like struggling on something, you need to go find your tribe.
Exactly. Get
off the couch and go find something. And it might not be the first thing. It could be the 10th thing, but you've got to go out there and figure what that is for you.
Right. Exactly. And I think the problem with a lot of guys is they'll get out, they'll get married, or they'll get involved with somebody, and then they just put everything else off. They think, okay, now I've got to be a husband. I got to put all this masculinity, male stuff to the side for a bit, to focus on providing, focus on my family duties, focus on my job. And then your life just becomes like, you become an automaton, right? You're just a robot, just going back and forth. And that's where Groundhog Day starts, right?
No, and that's, right. And what's sad about that is every man, every good provider falls into that trap, right? I fell into myself. Like, I need to come home. I need to be with my kids. I need to do this. I got to help with homework. I got to help with dinner. I got to do all these different things, which are all true. Yes, you have to do that. But if you are putting your own health and mental health and physical well-being off, you turn into that robot. and now you're miserable. And now you start looking at your kids and your wife and your family and your situation like they're the problem because you don't feel good. So it's like that old thing. It's like you have to be. This is a good one. My wife just did this skit for her. She did a talk at the women's club, and you know how it says when you're on an airplane and the mask come down and it says put your mask on first so that you could, and then put on your kid or something like this. So she made the point of why they do that, right? Because everybody's like, I'm not doing that. I'm going to put it on my kid first. So she had this funny skit where she had some employees like acted out where the kid was just being ridiculous and they were trying to put the mask on. And before she could finally get the mask on, the mom passes out.
Yeah.
And then the kid just looks at her mom and then holds the mask to her face. So the kid's good, but then the mom's passed out. So now you can't. So the whole point is like, you need to make sure that you are taking care of yourself,
right?
So that you can take care of the other ones around you. If Chris is falling apart, then how good are you going to be for your family if you're not?
You're not going to be present at all. Your mind's going to be somewhere else. Yeah.
Exactly. But if you're taking care of yourself and you're healthy, and when you walk into the house, you feel good, you're excited, you got that dopamine going, life is good. Time to get to work.
Absolutely. So as far as our community, the veteran community, I've been talking about this for a few years now. It seems like low testosterone is a problem amongst our community, in as far as when guys get out, dealing with things like traumatic brain injury, dealing with a lot of the other things that are happening. In fact, I've had experts on here before, like Dr. Mark Gordon, Andrew Marr, who've talked about the idea of hormonal shutdown being one of the reasons why we have a high suicide rate in the veteran community.
I agree. I think, not to take anything wrong from trauma, but let's identify what trauma is, right? A lot of people say it's post-traumatic stress and this and that, but yes, that is a real thing and that is something happens, but do not get PTSD twisted in some sort of way of like, it's a combat related thing. I'm not that I'm over PTSD or whatever, but when you look at it from a mental, physical side from a human being, trauma is trauma. Your brain doesn't give a shit whether it was a combat situation or a horrific car crash where you lost a kid and you got injured really bad. Like, your brain doesn't know the difference between combat and something horrible that happens here stateside. It's just trauma. It could be the same thing as a bad firefight or a girl getting raped at 16. Mm-hmm. If you look at the brain, that's a traumatic event, regardless how you look at it. So those things happen. Now, you take that stuff away and then just look at the lifestyle of someone. Highly unknown lifestyle, right? Like, you don't know what's going to happen. It's always changing. You are operating in the red. You're just revving that engine as long as for years and years and years, right? So if I go outside, put my truck in neutral and then smash the gas and just let that thing rev, how long do you think it's going to before something starts shaking loose? Right?
Yeah, definitely.
Right. You can't, it's not meant to operate that way. Our human bodies are not meant to operate that way. So what's happening is I think, and I'm not a doctor, and I'm not any like what the guests that you've had on here past, but I've experienced it personally, and I've kind of kind of gave my life to this because it's a rampant issue. But our adrenal glands are shot. We're over caffeinated. We're taking, we're chewing up a tons of, 1,600 milligrams of Motrin before we go step out on a mission. And then we chew up another 1,600 when we get back or while we're on it. Guys are, taking opiates to deal with body pain at, after 10 years, just to be able to function and go on and operate. And then you've got trauma. Then you've got you do have TBIs that just absolutely crush your pituitary gland, which is what secretes your hormones and your testosterone. So that's kind of what happened to me. I got injured. I got a head injury, and all of a sudden now I'm just not producing it anymore.
Right.
And then we find out. So this is a great, like before we press record, we were talking about my buddy Josh Hansberger that had a big injury. So now you say you have someone that has a really traumatic injury in either training or combat or a car crash or whatever. They're finding out that immediately your testosterone production shuts down.
Yeah.
And that was amazing to me, because now I'm like, well, why aren't we testing? Why isn't the military immediately testing these people and finding out why, making sure that their testosterone is on point? Because what's that going to do? If it goes in the crapper on an injury, then their healing ability is going to be so much slower. But so we take a guy like Josh. He has a bad parachute incident. Luckily for everyone, his family, his friends, everyone, he survived. It was a very long road to heal, as you heard. But he got better, but that was a lot on him. And he did have to get on testosterone. But why wouldn't we check that immediately, see where he's at? And if he needs supplementation while he's going through therapy, let's give it to him. Let's get him back.
Right.
Maybe it takes 1.5 years to get back instead of 3 years.
Right. And that's the thing, that show is going to be released before this one does. And his injury, I mean, he literally broke his femur in half mid-flight on a parachute accident. Like, insane injury.
It was wild.
He was describing it, I was getting nauseous. And, injuries like that, I mean, you think about the amount of money they put into the average troop, and then the amount of money they put into people like you, you would think that they'd want to bring in some force resilience to try to keep guys going and try to put guys back together. But I think
the cost is something like, I don't know, $10 a week at cost.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy how much money they could save and how many resources they could keep in the game.
Yeah. So real quick, if you're listening to this and you haven't listened to Josh's story, rewind, push pause, Go back, listen to that, and then come catch up with us.
Definitely. One thing I want to break down here though is because you mentioned the Motrin, right? You mentioned the lifestyle of somebody who's in the military, and I bring a lot of this stuff from time to time in the community, and I get a lot of people come back at me like, okay, boomer, because it sounds kind of pious and stuff like that. But the thing about testosterone production, in a couple of ways. Number one, your digestion heavily affects your testosterone production.
Yeah.
So
your gut lining,
your gut brain axis, because your brain is connected to your gut via the vagus nerve in a couple of different places. But beyond that, your testicles are outside of your body for a reason. They don't like heat. They don't like inflammation. So you consider about 75% of your immune system is in your gut. So if you're not digesting food properly, what happens is the food particles interact with your immune system that sends inflammatory cytokines. I don't want to get all scientific, but it sends inflammation throughout your body. That starts killing off your Leydig cells, which are the cells that produce testosterone, right? And the thing about chewing Motrin and NSAIDs, they shut down all inflammation in your body, but what they also do is they keep your intestinal tract from healing. You couple that with a high drinking lifestyle, lack of sleep. I know you had Dr. Kirk Parsley on your show, and he's been on my show a couple of times. That keeps you from healing your intestinal lining. A lot of the other things we're doing, sucking down MREs, which are pretty hard to digest as well, that can be a huge detriment to you being able to produce testosterone in the future. Plus, when it comes to traumatic brain injury, what they're finding is something as little as mating a 50 cal can interrupt that pituitary gland, and the pituitary gland produces a follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. And if that shuts down, the whole cascade shuts down. So a lot of you guys at home who are listening, you maybe you're 21, 22 right now, you feel like you're invincible. You got to think about how the stuff you're doing right now will affect your resilience down the line because you don't feel invincible forever.
Chris, I'm going to tell you a story real quick about what you just said before I lose it. So what you just said about the 50 cal. Okay. When I went to an inpatient brain clinic, in 14, and I never got blown up in an IED. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's happened, right? There was an IED that went off, but I wasn't that close to it. So in my mind, like a typical Marine, I'm like, I'm good. Nothing, I didn't get launched in a rocket out of a Humvee. I didn't step on one, nothing like that. So I'm good. And he just kind of looked at me like I was stupid and said, let me ask you a question. And he had been treating a bunch of special operators for a couple years. So he kind of knew us and knew our story and knew our life. And he goes, let me ask you a question. How many rockets have you shot? And I was like, what? I don't know, doc. Are you kidding me? He goes, how many flashbangs have gone off by your feet? How many parachute openings have you had? How many doors have you breached? How many times have you done pukal sticks and got knocked in the head? Yeah. He said, all of these micro things add up. Like you don't get to, like when one happens, you don't get to heal from it. Like you have a ticker, and more that you add to it, it fills that bucket of water until it eventually falls over. So if you're a guy out there, it's like, well, I didn't get a TBI, but you've been doing that job and you've shot a bunch of AT4s, you've been shooting 50 cals, you've been shooting an M16, an M4, M16, doesn't matter. That all has concussion that comes around you. And over a period of time, that does everything what Chris just does. That beats that gland up, and it because our brains are just literally sitting in a bucket of water. So it's just bouncing around in there. So anytime there's any sort of overpressure, it is damaging your brain and it's damaging your gland to where you're not producing that luteinizing hormone. And that's how he found out. He goes, and not to get super weird on the sex side, but he goes, let me ask you a question. He goes, how's the quality of your orgasms? Which I was like, whoa, bro, like we just met. But he could tell, and that's how he knew my pituitary gland was down, because my luteinizing hormone was in the crapper. And he was like, and your luteinizing hormone is where basically, and again, not a doctor, but is where like the quality of your orgasms and quality of everything come to play. So if you're having low quality, low count, low volume, that's kind of where that comes from. And I was, not that I was kind of being cocky, like, no, I'm good, man. I'm good. And he's like, well, all of this data from your brain and from your lab says different, so if you're, and the only reason I want to interrupt you, because I want people to know that, because they're like, well, because there's everybody's like me. You're like me. You're like, well, I didn't do anything that bad, so I'm good. Right. I didn't lose a leg in an IED. I didn't get launched out of a Humvee. I only did my 15, 10 years, 4 years, whatever you did. And, so I have no excuses. I should be fine. But the truth is that job over a period of time of doing all that does give you brain injuries.
Right. Exactly. And that's the thing. I mean, you're exactly right as far as that job over time, but also for those civilians at home who are listening to this, those of you who played football, right?
Yeah.
Those of you might have played lacrosse, those of you who might have boxed or done MMA for a bit. Plus, if you're a 20-year-old who's sitting at home and you're doing all this other stuff that might be ruining your digestive system, taking Motrin every day after you get a hangover, things like that.
Yeah.
These
it
things
all adds
will
up.
all add up.
Yeah. It's all adding up. So everything that you're doing from the very, very beginning, it's not like it goes away, right? Like as we age, we're just filling up different buckets of shit, and we're carrying that around with us, and you've got to deal with it,
Right. There's one more thing I want to cover here too, before we get into talking about some of these solutions, is the idea of sex hormone binding globulin and aromatase. And aromatase is an enzyme that turns testosterone into estrogen. Right. Sex hormone binding globulin is a protein that will bound up your testosterone and make it less bioavailable. And the thing that happens there is also has to do with lifestyle as well,
Right.
because if you're not eating enough, you're going to upregulate sex hormone binding globulin. If you're eating too much, you're going to upregulate aromatase. And
Right.
so again, diet and exercise are going to be huge things here as well.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you said that, because I think this is the biggest thing. And if you're listening in the US, and I can't speak on other countries, I can speak on the countries that I go to, but from where I travel, for instance, Greece, the food is very different.
Mm-hmm.
And we have changed. I think it was Jimmy Carter, I think, that really, the whole corn industry in the 70s, but we changed our food in the 70s. And this is really where you start to see, now granted, lifestyle and this and that, but from a fundamental basis, we literally changed the way we eat and changed our food in the 70s. And this is the reason why from the 70s on, Americans are typically obese, right? So now we're putting essentially this crap in our body. But if you take someone who is, and I'm not trying to say like go crazy hippie and only eat stuff that you grow in your backyard. It's not what I'm saying. But listen, shit in, shit out, right? So when you're talking about gut lining, you're talking about these things and all these different foods. If make it real simple for yourself. If you want to get healthy, eat real food, eat vegetables, eat meat, eat good meat, eat like, I don't want to turn this on a meat thing, but eat healthy meats, lean, healthy meats that aren't like processed and overproduced. Hell, if you could go find a cow in your neighborhood and go half it with your neighbor, and he's been out there chomping on grass for a year, do that. Like, go get a freezer. It's $150 at Lowe's. Go half a cow with somebody and go to and get it all butchered up and throw it in there. But like, you have to, if you want your body to run the way that human beings are run, we have to start looking at the quality of food that we're putting in our mouth. Because like what you said about your gut lining and everything, we need those nutrients. We need everything that food gives us. And it's not just to feel good, and unfortunately we've made food like a comfort thing, but it's fuel for our body. So that's the way I look at it. I want to put the very, very best inside of me so that my gut lining does heal, my intestines absorb every little nutrient that it can, so that I can operate at my best. And a lot of people go like, well, I'm not losing weight. And I start looking at what they're eating, and it's like, well, I had this meal that I warmed up in the microwave. And I'm like, yeah, great. Macronutrient wise, yeah, you're on point, but it's garbage.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Go grill a piece of chicken, go grill some thighs, and then make yourself, some butternut squash and some zucchini.
Exactly.
And you know what I mean? Like, grind up some beet in a juice,
Yep.
and go ahead.
The best way I heard it described is you want to go after foods that your great grandfather would have recognized.
Right. Before we changed everything.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And now it's like so foreign. That concept is such a foreign concept to the general populace, because it's harder. Nobody knows how to cook anything. It's so much more difficult. Unfortunately, it can be more expensive.
Yeah.
Than just going and getting DiGiorno's pizza and throw it in the oven. Like, that's cheap. Blows my mind.
Well, and that's the thing too. I mean, if you know how to cook, once you learn how to cook, you can prepare a meal in like 20 minutes.
It doesn't take much. Yeah.
It doesn't take much at all. And the other thing is, like, I mean, I'll post my food on Facebook, and I eat a lot of organ meat because it's nutrient dense, like grass-fed beef liver, super nutrient dense. People were like, oh my God, how could you eat that? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, dude, it's freaking delicious if you know how to cook it. And it's so good for you. It's so good for you.
And you're going to see the benefits of it. And if anybody that, like, when we do surviving the cut groups and things like that, that's the biggest thing. So every once in a while we'll run like a 90-day thing on, losing weight or something like that. And it's really like looking at their food. The biggest difference, with the people that get the most out of it and make the biggest changes, it's not because they're eating less and they're working out more. It's the education piece of what they're putting in their mouth. When that starts to happen, everything changes. And that going back to testosterone, that 100% has to do with what your hormones are, especially if you're going to Walmart and just buying the cheapest thing on the shelf or cheapest thing in a thing. That crap is pumped full of hormones. I'll tell you this. So my wife went plant-based for a little while when we were trying to have a baby because she was having a lot of hormonal issues. When you're going through the IVF process, it is so crucial that your hormones are like exactly what it was. So her estrogen was like 300 and something. And they're like, okay, well, we need to come that down. So she went plant-based, and then and that means cutting out all the meat and everything, and just, eating pea proteins and lentils and soy and, all that kind of stuff. So the next week it dropped 100. The next week it dropped another 100. It went down to 19. The doctor was like, we've never seen anything like this and so fast. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Wow. So when they went in, they saw that her estrogen was a 19. They were like, what are you doing? She's like, well, I stopped eating processed food and meat. And they're like, that's amazing. They're like, well, you're good to go. And guess what happened? We put a little smush in, and boom, pregnant.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another big point, is that if you're eating a lot of that crap that's been treated with pesticides or that has all these chemicals, I mean, there's xenoestrogens in the food that can mimic estrogen in your body.
Right.
Right. And you're taking in all this exogenous stuff. And for women, those women out there who are listening to this, particularly women who are like either premenopausal or about to hit menopause, when you're going through that, both estrogen and progesterone drop. Progesterone is meant to keep you calm. It's meant to counteract the effects of estrogen. But what happens is estrogens, because they come in exogenously, they're still there at a high level, and you get what's called estrogen dominance.
I was going to say, it becomes estrogen dominance. Yeah, and that's where like the weight gain and all kinds of mood stuff happens.
Cancer.
Yep. And if you look at it with men too, like, so if we're eating those same foods, this is the reason why men's like, I'm not throwing anybody in the bus, but like you see a lot of people with men having boobs, and they're having, you see a kid that's young kid, and he's got like a womanly shape. He's got wider hips. He's got boobs because he's eating what's available to him. His parents are feeding what's available to him. But we're getting this estrogen dominant situation where this is what we're producing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, you've been working with Core Medical Group
yes.
for your therapy. And I want to get into this because I think guys at home should know the difference between a quality clinic versus some of the other clinics you're going to see out there. And I don't want to badmouth anybody, but I think there's a lot of cookie cutter aspects to that industry that have come up, particularly over recent years, because a lot of men are going through low T.
Yeah. I've seen a couple that are literally like almost no labs, like you sign up and then they just issue you a cookie cutter solution. Like, here's your testosterone, here's here's your anti-E, and then see you later. And we'll just auto deliver this thing every month, which is, for me, like, for what I know and what you know, is totally scary, because it's not a cookie cutter solution. It is 100% about your symptoms, how you're feeling, and what your levels are. And so I don't have experience with anything. I'm very, very lucky, Chris. I don't have any experience with anything bad. I got on with a doctor in Kansas City who is a Vietnam surgeon. Absolutely loves his Marines, man. He just loves his Marines and service members. And so that's who kicked me off. Not unfortunately, but he's 75. He's kind of winding down. He's in Kansas City. I'm in North Carolina. So as much as I love him and support his family, it just wasn't being conducive to being here. When I came out about because I had never, on a personal basis, I would tell people that I was on HRT, but I never came out public on social media and said anything about it, really, not with a message, So coming off having surgery to get my sperm out so that we could have a baby, which would probably be its own podcast in itself. But, and then coming back on, I wanted to take that opportunity to really educate people on the truths of it, right? That you're not, like, it's not steroids, testosterone is a natural is a natural substance, natural hormone that our bodies create. We're just reproducing it. So like what the difference is between, you know, quote unquote steroids and what, you know, testosterone and HRT is. And then when that happened, when I did that, I was getting a lot of questions like, hey man, like everything you just described as far as symptoms I've been having, I feel like I should go get checked out. And I didn't really have a solution for him. So my good buddy, Vince Vargas, I don't know, has he been on the show?
He's been on the show. Yep.
Good,
Great
good.
guy.
Yeah.
Great guy.
So Vince had been working with him. He's like, man, they're really solid dudes. They're cut above, right? So he did an intro with me, and then I switched over and started working with them about 3 months prior to our official partnership. And let me tell you, man, these dudes, as far as the science and the care of the patient, I am blown away. I am absolutely blown away by their, what is it called? They have, patient coordinators. Mm-hmm. So you get issued a patient coordinator and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I am just absolutely blown away by the way that they manage patients and the way that, and how smart they are with, and I haven't pushed it out yet, but like how smart they are with peptides. And I don't know if you've talked about that on the show, but
we haven't talked directly about peptides, but that's definitely an important thing. I've been looking at peptides for my ulcerative colitis.
I'm blown away. I'm like, I literally started researching peptides, and and Chris, I got angry because after what I was, and I'm not researching like Google, I'm reading medical research papers about what different peptides do.
Right.
And I'm like, what the hell, man? Why is not every recovering veteran on this peptide? Like, right. Okay, like fat loss, bone density increase, the rehabilitation of ligaments and joints, and joint fluidness. I'm like, why are we not taking this?
Regenerating the interior lining of your intestinal tract.
Right,
that's a huge one too. Like there's so much that they can do.
I was pissed, man. I was pissed that nobody had told me about this for years. And it's just so taboo and it's so negative, you know, and it's because people are uneducated. So anyways, they are just, they put you and I to shame as far as what they know and how they handle it. If I call them and I'm like, hey man, I have, this is what I feel. This is what this is what's happening. And they almost go, oh, well, this is what's happening. Let me look at your levels. Yeah, this is what's happening. You need this. Boom, done. And it fixes the problem like that.
That's awesome.
And I'm thinking like, you know, especially for, you know, the veterans that are out there that have to deal with the VA, it's just, that's not a normal situation, right?
Exactly.
Like that's somebody that's like on point with that and is ready to help you out and is so knowledgeable about a subject that they immediately have a solution to your problem and then can handle it immediately. It's just like that just typically doesn't happen. So my experience with them has been, just absolutely amazing. And now, and because of what they do, like they can take care of anyone, anywhere. So they have patient coordinators. They work through LabCorp. It's not a super, I mean, it's fast process, but it's not like you're going to call them and then get a bottle of testosterone shipped to you. That's not the way it works. You've got to do the due diligence. They do the due diligence with their doctors and everybody on the staff. You go do, I don't know, at LabCorp. I went to LabCorp and the guy had one vial pulled out and then he pulled up my record. He was like, oh damn, they're taking all your blood today. I think he had like 6 of those big vials and like 2 other little small ones. But they run the biggest lab panel that I've ever had. They really like pulled everything that they could. And then with that, you have access to it, right? So through LabCorp, you log on and you can see everything. And then they just work through it with you. They line by line, they go through and explain every little line.
And that's so important because let's say you do go to one of those cookie cutter things. And by the way, if you're in the VA system, they're probably going to send you to a cookie cutter program just because they
try to do it. Yeah, they're not good at it. They don't have the education and the experience in it at all. The VA didn't even want me on testosterone.
Right.
And I'm like, but my testosterone's low. They're like, well, no, it's within the range of, you know, within the 250 to 800 or whatever they want to call it at the time. And I'm like, yeah, but it's 259. They're like, well, technically it's in the range. I'm like, but I'm 32. I mean, this is when I was 32, but I'm 32. They're like, yeah, but that might just be where your level is. I feel like shit. Yeah, but it's in the range. I'm like, okay, never mind. But there are some people that, are getting taken care of. The problem I have with the VA and HRT is they do one thing. So they'll give you a little bit of testosterone, but they won't give you HCG. They will not give you any sort of Arimidex. They don't look at your B12. They don't look at the whole picture, right? They're looking at one thing, and they're operating within a range. And I'm going to say it right here. And this is Nick's personal opinion, but the range is bullshit, because
complete bullshit.
It's complete bullshit. What I feel, what if me at 800 might be Chris at 500, right? Like there is no range. It's all BS. It is complete. I've met a 65-year-old with a natural testosterone level of 1500. Now he's just genetically gifted, but he's 65 and has a 1500 testosterone naturally.
It's like Dan Pena, that crazy guy. Yeah, he says his testosterone's like 1500. He's like 70.
But the thing is like that just shows you how different it is for everyone. It depends on your lifestyle, your traumatic events. Like there's just so much that goes into it that you should never. So now I've said this on my videos. If you go to a doc and he pulls out this piece of paper with this range, just get up and leave.
Yeah.
Just get up and walk out.
No, exactly. That range is, it's the average of everybody from 18 to 80. And if you've got average testosterone for an 80-year-old and you're 35, they're going to say you're in the range, man. You're not going to get any testosterone, right? But the other thing I want to say here is that if you go to one of these cookie cutter clinics and they just hand you a vial of testosterone cypionate and they don't give you anything else, essentially what will happen is you'll inject that. You might feel better, but it's not hitting those underlying issues that we were talking about earlier. And
you're going to cause more problems. Yeah, and you're going to cause more problems for yourself, because yes, your testosterone will go up, but your testes will go into atrophy because you're giving it synthetic testosterone. So what natural production you did have is going to shut down. All right. And then if there is any sort of aromatization of testosterone to estrogen, now you're going to have an estrogen dominance problem. So this is the reason why it is absolutely crucial that you work with somebody that has their shit together.
That's awesome. And so Core is they were running a special for veterans that you had up for a while, right?
And actually I don't know when you're going to put this up, but they're running that same special now. Basically it's $199. Let me pull that up. Yeah, it's $199 to get started with your labs, which is usually a lot more than that. Which I don't know if anybody's ever done lab work privately, but that shit is expensive.
It's expensive as hell.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm trying to find it, man. It's like $199 to get set up, and then you kind of go from there. And then here it is. And then once you get set up, it's something like, I think they have a plan that's like $35 a week for your whole package. That's testosterone, your HCG, your Arimidex, everything. It comes out to like $35 a week or something, which is crazy to me, because people go like, well, I can't afford it. I'm like, oh yeah, asshole. Like how much you spend in a Starbucks a month? Go run that in your QuickBooks. Like we don't have to get into a money spending problem, but man, there's so much as far as prioritizing of where to spend your money and what's good for you. But yeah, it doesn't come once you get set up with them. It doesn't come out. So $199 for your blood work. And then after that, it's normally $399, I think. And then no new patient fee. So they're waiving the patient fee. So, that's awesome. Yeah, that is awesome. Huge. And for those of you that have looked into it, you're probably shaking your head going, well, that's freaking good. And for those of you who are saying that's expensive, go shop around. Go shop around.
And here's the thing. What are you going to spend your money on, and how how priceless is your life? And
That's,
when I'm talking about your life,
yes.
yeah,
And we talk about that in the gym, and it's like somebody that's overweight comes in and talks about a gym membership and talks about working with a trainer. And I'm like, okay, and I kind of get hard with people because I want people to take their own life serious. But if somebody's obese and I'm like, well, let me go ask your kids what your life is worth. Is your life worth $2,000 a year? Because I'm going to tell you right now, you're 350 pounds. And if you don't get this weight off, you're going to die young.
right.
And your kids are going to bury you young. So let me ask them if working with a personal trainer is worth $2,000 a year for them. And their tone usually changes because I'm like, now we're talking about the price of a human being. Exactly. What is your life worth to us? So if it comes down to what is your life worth to you? What is your quality of life? Is your quality of life worth $35 a week? I think yeah.
Right. That's the most important thing too, because you might think you're going to get to like 50, 60 years old and you're just going to want to sit on the couch and read the newspaper, but you're not. You're not. You're not. You're going to want to do shit. And if your energy is tapped and you're done, like life's not going to be happy for you. And
Chris, I feel like actually as you get older, the more shit you want to do because you feel like time is moving so fast. You're like, I want to do more, But the other thing with signing up with them is, and this is what, and it almost, I get, in my older age, I'm starting to get a little more emotional, but when I have the feeling that the person on the other end of the phone or the other end of the desk genuinely cares about me, it hits me. So when I first started talking to Sydney and Mel and Nick, my patient coordinator, and all the people at CoreMed, there's this feeling that like they truly give a shit about you and they truly give a shit about how you feel and your life. So when you approach someone that is talking to you and you can feel how emotionally connected they are and how much they care about how you feel and your quality of life, it hit me, man. It truly like touched me. And that's the big difference with them, I think, is just how much they give a shit about their patients. And it's not a sales pitch, man. It's just, especially with their veterans, they just care so much, and they want the best version of that person to be there. And that was my personal experience when I first got signed up with them, several months ago.
Got one more question for you on this, because I know we're coming up on time, but so for people who are considering doing this, but let's say they haven't had kids yet and they're waiting to have kids, with the way they do this, do they do this in a way where you can come off and it's managed effectively?
Yeah. So that was in my podcast with Mel. I don't know if you caught that, but a great story. Guy was the youngest president of the Hells Angels, ended up going to spend a lot of time in the pen, got right, came back out. They RICO acted his whole crew. He had to go back for another 9 years, but he's amazing that he's still positive. Now he's helping vets and helping everybody and all kinds of stuff. But that was what we talked about, is I wish that I was with CoreMed group then. Because for instance, Vince was on testosterone, and they managed his symptoms so that he could have the surgery and they could do IVF and get pregnant. So he didn't have to do what I did.
Oh man.
Yeah. So if I would have been there with them then, they could have, okay, we're going to lower you. We're going to put you on some Clomid. We're going to maybe put you on something else. And then we're going to test you and see where you're at. And they made it happen, man. So he never had to fully come off and go into the crapper like I did. And awesome. So, yeah. So if you're say you're in your 30s, you need to be on testosterone, you can get signed up with them at the point that you're ready to, like, if, with your significant other, like, hey, it's time to have some kids. They will come up with a plan for you to be successful, and they're going to walk you through the whole thing. So we talked a little bit about that, and I was like, well, damn it. Because that was a really rough 8 months for me, man.
Yeah, that's I mean, coming off, and this is the thing, if you go on this, follow the protocol. Don't be one of these guys who just decides to come off, and because
No, man,
that
it's
can
not
lead
a,
to some really bad things,
yeah,
particularly
that's,
if you're prone to depression and things like that too.
yeah, it's not a good idea. And that's really where I found out, because everybody's like, well, is this a 6 months thing? It's like, no, man, this is me for life, because I damaged my gland. My luteinizing hormone was damaged. It's like in the labs. Like I broke that fucker off, like I broke it. And, so this is a long-term thing. We're not talking about steroids. We're not talking about cycles. We're talking about stuff that's in your body already. And if it's messed up, and here's the deal, even if you don't get injured, as you age, this happens anyway. As you age, this is essentially what makes us die, right? Like all of our things that help us heal and help us regenerate skin and our organs and our gut lining and everything that happens, that all starts to fade off. And when that fades off, that's how we age. That's how things start to die off. And then we get old and die. But we're living in a world now that we don't have to feel like crap, for the last 75% of our life, which is a lot of life, So yeah, I went on around 31, 32. That's essentially a quarter. If I live to 90, it's a third of my life, man.
Right.
That's the third of my life. I'm going to feel like crap. Absolutely not.
No, you don't. There's too much to do, guys.
There's too much to do. I got a lot of stuff to do, Chris.
Exactly. Well, Nick, man, I want to thank you for coming back on here and enlightening us on this. And again, I just want to acknowledge you, man. I love your message. I love what you put out there into the world. I love your channel, because when people go to your channel, they're literally learning about everything, your business, how you conduct your business, family life. I love what you're doing with the tips for 2020 this year.
Yeah.
And if you haven't checked out Nick's YouTube channel or any of his stuff yet, or his book, Excommunicated Warrior, you need to be on top of that, because he's putting out some of the best content out there. So
thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Awesome. And to everybody out there, think about what we said here today. We're going to get links up on the show notes for Core Medical Group, so you guys can go check this out. Do this the right way. Don't go to your local dealer and try to get it that way, because you will screw yourself up, right? So go with a reputable professional like this if you're going to do it. And thank you again, Nick, for putting these resources out there, man.
My pleasure, man.
Awesome. To everybody out there, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back at you next week with some more awesome content. And this is Chris and Nick, and we are out.